Hey guys, it's handcrafted by Jason Cooper. I'm out in the garage today. I got another project to share with you. But before I show you what I built here, be sure to click subscribe here on YouTube or stop by my website at woodwork.cooperjason.com. And there you can sign up for my email newsletter. I give some plans away. You can check out my other projects. So today's project is actually a very simple, very quick one. It's that time of year where we have a 3-season porch off the back of our house, and there's some of our plants that we need to bring inside. And we've always kind of struggled, where do we put these? We've got a few random spots where we stick them, and they struggle through the winter, try to get them all in a good place where they get enough light and all of that kind of stuff. So this year, I built a plant stand. Just a very simple thing. For me, I was able to build it out of some scrap materials, and it went together very quickly. Let me show you. All right, here it is. It's a 3-tier plant stand. Again, we wanted to get some plants in out of our 3-season porch and keep them inside for the winter. And to put this together this afternoon, we needed a place for just some of our smaller plants. In my case, I was able to make it out of some material I had left over. The shelves themselves are 6-inch wide, well, 5.5-inch wide cedar deck boards. So they're thicker. They're not 3/4 of an inch like normal lumber. They're 1 inch thick. And then the sides, those are also cedar. Those are 2x2 cedar. Those are for the vertical spindles on a deck. If you'd use that style, I repaired a deck a couple years ago and had a couple of these left over. So this is one that didn't cost me a thing. Went together very quickly, and will be very helpful in keeping the plants in one place through the winter. So let me show you how I got started. So the first step was to cut the shelves to length. And if you noticed on the example, the 2 lower shelves were a little bit narrower because they fit between the legs in notches, and the top shelf is longer. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the 2 lower shelves and eventually cut the top shelf here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim both ends of the 2 lower shelves. Once I have that done, I'm going to switch over to my 45-degree angle jig that I've built from watching a YouTube video similar to this one. I do not have my own video on how to make this, but I'll link the video that I worked from below. It's great anytime you need to do 45-degree miters on anything, and the idea is that if you use the jig for both the left and the right side of the joint, if you did your jig right, you will always get a perfect 90 on whatever you're working on here. So in this example, I'm cutting the legs to length. They're going to have a 45-degree angle on them, both top and bottom. And then they're also going to be notched out in the middle for those 2 lower shelves. I'm going to make some initial cuts here, and then I'll just work it back and forth with the blade set to the proper height in order to notch out just half of the thickness of this material. And these are 2x2 cedar spindles used on most cedar decks on the railings. So they're readily available at most home stores, both in cedar or in treated or whatever else you would want. Although in this case, because it's an indoor project, this will be just plain red cedar. Now that I have one side done, it's just a matter of doing this same procedure for the other side, which will be a mirror image. Notice I'm using the left side of the jig, but I'm using the original piece to hopefully get the exact same positioning for these grooves, adjust the height of the blade, and then just repeatedly work the blade over that area until I've got my notch complete. Just sneaking up on the cut, I'll use a piece of scrap to gauge the thickness when I've gone far enough to accommodate the shelf. Once I'm happy with those cuts, it's time to cut the two legs to length. And since they're mirror images, I'm going to use one to measure the other after I cut it, so that hopefully they're as identical as possible. And just got to remember to use or cut the angle in the correct direction, matching the angle that is on the other end of the piece. Now I'm going to take the two shelves that I've already cut that fit in these grooves. Just going to do a quick dry fit, a little test here to see that just to make sure that I'm happy with what I've done so far. I always like to do a dry fit on my pieces well before assembly, just that way I know if I need to tweak the cuts here a little bit, widen those grooves, if I'm having a little bit too much of a struggle getting the shelf in, but also it's going to help me later when I do go to glue this piece up. I'll have a better idea of how best to get the pieces to all fit together, be able to hold them and get it all ready to go before I'm dealing with glue. Once I'm satisfied with the results, I'll switch over to my 45 again, and I'll cut the top angle for the two back legs. I've got one scrap piece that I'm going to use, and then I've got a longer piece that I'm going to put a 45 on so that I can switch it back over to my other table saw jig here and get the straight cut and cutting them both at the same time. And while I have this jig on the table saw, I'm going to go ahead and cut the top shelf. Now that I've cut the other two shelves and have the legs, I know the exact width that I'm targeting and how much overlap I want. So I'm just going to cut to this to length. One of the great things about having a sled for your table saw for these straight cuts is that you use the line that's created by the kerf of the blade to line up your cuts, and it makes it really simple. No eyeballing it, no sighting it. You just line up your cut mark with the edge of the kerf line, and you know you get a perfect cut every time. Now that I have all my pieces, it's time to sand. Now that the sanding is done, it's time for final assembly, and I'm just going to use the edge of the table saw as a straight edge, clamp a board to it so I can press these pieces against there, and I'm just using a few screws to put these together, and eventually a little bit of glue in the grooves, as well as a few well-placed brad nails. Once I'm happy with the placement of this top shelf, I'll grab my countersink bit and a couple of nails and drill this from the back side so that it's not visible. That's one thing that I've done consistently on this is the screws that are holding the legs together are all from the back side, so they won't be visible from the front. The only thing that's really visible are there's a couple of brad nails on each shelf just to hold the end right in the groove so it won't ever move, and once that glue sets, it'll be locked in for a long time. All right, so this is the finished 3-tier plant stand. Now, I'm going to be honest, it's actually been a little while since I made this. But in the video, I didn't put any supports for these back legs. I thought they'd be strong enough, it's not going to bear much weight, but it wasn't. They were just a little too loose, and this is, cedar, so it's a little soft. So I ended up cutting some pieces both on each side. There's one over there, and then on the back to stiffen up this leg and give it a little support. But once I did that, this thing turned out great. It's worked well. It holds plenty of nice, plenty of small plants or a couple of bigger ones depending on what you got. And it's a great beginner project. Well, that's it for today's project. Be sure to check out some of my other videos here on my YouTube channel, and go ahead and click subscribe here on YouTube and be notified when those new videos come out. And don't forget to stop by my website at woodwork.cooperjason.com, and there you can sign up for my email newsletter and see some of my other projects that are on there. So until next time, see ya.